Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'd like to declare the meeting open. Madam Mayor would like to declare the meeting open. I just want to run through some of the logistics for today. Because we're starting early, we've ordered tea and coffee for 11 a.m. Our standing orders require that there is a break after, or a meeting duration at more than 3 hours. You have to have an adjournment, so we'll have a 10-minute adjournment at 11 o'clock. It's my intention to move the council into public excluded to deal with items 42 and 43 at 12 o'clock, and then the council can reconvene at 2 o'clock with Andrew Turner in the chair, as I won't be here this afternoon. And what else was I going to say? I think that was about all. Right, okay, so I will call for apologies, and I have Councillor Jimmy Chen and myself for early departure. Would someone like to move it? Andrew Turner, seconded Jamie Goff. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Declarations of interest, there haven't been any. Sorry, declarations of interest. Oh yes, Deputy Mayor Turner and Councillor Buck declared an interest in public excluded item. It'd be 42 and 43, wouldn't it? Both? Yeah. And so that's why we're dealing with them in the order that I'm proposing. And so now we move to public participation. I'd like to invite and welcome Kim Morton from Otautahi Creative Spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to address the council about the work of Otautahi Creative Spaces. To thank the council.
Now we need your microphone on, so there should be a button that you can. Yes.
Now it's green. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Kim Morton from Otautahi Creative Spaces. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address the council about our work, about the partnerships we have with the council, and to invite your future support. We're working in neighbourhood creation stations. These are creativity groups in local communities, building social connections and resilience. We're now running 4 creation stations in Aranui, New Brighton, Peterborough and Phillipstown, and these are being run in partnership with the Christchurch City Libraries. They're successful because we're activating community spaces, which are the living rooms of our communities. We have the total support and commitment of library staff, and we work with local groups such as Actus to maximise participation. We're seeing boosted resilience, a real increase in social capital, social connection, stronger families, and relationships that bridge culture, age and status. So here's a picture of 2 artists in the Aranui Creation Station. The fact that one is in a police uniform really makes no difference when you're both working together, creating a woodcut, trying hard not to cut your fingers in the process. So we've seen, I guess they're a good example, our creation stations are a good example of communities leading their own recovery and having a lot of control about how that happens. The other aspect of our work is Room 5 creativity groups. These are creativity groups for people with mental illness. We run 6 groups at the Phillipstown Community Hub. 2 of those groups are kaupapa Māori. Through these groups, we're providing tailored intensive support in a small group environment. We're now supporting 48 artists to reach their aspirations. The artists are achieving great things, and that's best summed up by one artist who said, "Art saved my life." Again, we're seeing a reduction in social isolation. So people who formerly didn't leave their houses have got the bravery to come regularly and weekly to these creativity groups. We're seeing improved well-being, and for some people that's a reduction in their encounters with the formal mental health system and a reduction in medication. We're seeing motivation and hope. There's a real sense of belonging, and that the artists are part of something in the wider community. People are taking up volunteer jobs at Eastside Gallery. We've had artists taking up scholarships with the Learning Connection and achieving qualifications. And people are also getting paid work and generating income from the sale of their art. This picture also, I guess, depicts how artists are expressing their feelings about the earthquakes through their art. So here's a drawing by Carmen Brown of the Christchurch Cathedral. The balloons represent the people who died in the earthquakes. It's the most beautiful work. She sold this in Auckland recently, and she said, "I want people in Auckland to understand what we've gone through in Christchurch." Creativity is also giving people a reason to reconnect with the central city. So, excuse me a moment. We recently went on a group visit to Coca and saw David Shrigley's exhibition there. Our artists were invited to prepare work in response, and this week I delivered 85 drawings to Coca, which will be displayed in the gallery, in the gallery cafe downstairs. What struck me though was that for some of the artists it was the first time they'd been back in the city since the earthquakes, and it was quite confronting for them, but they overcame their fears, and now they have the honour of having their work exhibited alongside an artist of Shrigley's international standing. So creativity opens doors, offers hope and a place of belonging, and provides a way for people to use their voice. But most importantly, it builds resilience and social connection with like-minded people. Our work this year has been funded by earthquake recovery grants from Red Cross and MSD. This funding won't be continued. We don't receive any funding at the moment from the District Health Board. We've succeeded in the face of adversity, excuse me, in an environment of reduced funding streams, high need, and I guess an environment where the connection between creativity and well-being is not always well understood. We have a strong track record, and we're committed to building well-being through creativity in Christchurch long term. We've focused our work in the east where the needs are the greatest, and our partnership with the Christchurch City Libraries maximises engagement and activates community spaces. So we invite your help to continue our work. We're excited about the Council's commitment to resilience and wellbeing through the establishment of the Community Resilience Fund. Although announced in February, there's still no information about how this fund will be used and how it may be accessed, and so we'd appreciate your advice on this and how we can partner with the Council in future to continue our work. We urge the Council to keep up the momentum and prioritise support to build the resilience of the citizens of Christchurch and to focus on the most vulnerable and least engaged. We also ask the Council to support the long-term use of the closed schools as community gathering spaces, our base at the Phillipstown Hub and the Old School New Brighton, both being very valuable assets for the community and ones that we hope can be available long term. We understand there's a lot of complexity around that though. I've given an information sheet about our programs with my contact details, and we would love to have you to visit. If you'd like to contact me for further information, my details are there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased that you came and made that presentation, because it's very grounding, and it reminds us of what creativity and innovation can do in the wake of an experience that we've actually shared it collectively. You know, there's just nobody that's been unaffected, but people who may have had pre-existing vulnerabilities have been made even more vulnerable, and I just think what you're doing is awesome, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
But this is just the public participation part, it's just a 5-minute.
Yes,
Okay. Well, there's not time. Yeah, thank you very much.
My details are there if you want to.
Yeah, but councillors do take up the opportunity to approach Kim and do take the opportunity to go and join with the different opportunities that are there. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is presentation of petitions. There are none, or there were no deputations by appointment, no presentation of petitions. Supplementary reports, I'll move that item 43, public excluded housing opportunity, be received and considered at the council meeting today. Do I have a seconder for that? That's not conflicted. Tim Scandrett. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Would someone like to move the minutes as per Andrew, seconded by Anne Galloway? I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. I'm going to just leave the Building and Infrastructure Improvement Allowance report just till later on in the agenda. So if we could move to council-controlled organisations' financial statements for the 6 months. And Ref, would you like to introduce this report as the chair of the committee?
It's self-explanatory. Yeah, I don't have anything to say about it.
Oh, would you like to move it then?
Yes, I'll move it.
And Jamie will second it. So are there any questions? Glenn?
Oh, thank you. I just had one question. Just curious, really, page 92 over civic building, it has an environmental target. That seems clear, but it's kind of mixed in with a social performance one, and I couldn't see what that was. My question arises over the fact of smoking, although we have a no smoking area at the on the Worcester Street, and I think also the Hereford Street side of the building. It's actually not being adhered to, and the smoking is being transported up through the ventilation system into the committee rooms. So I, for one, I don't have a life aim to be a passive smoker. So I actually want, if there's an objective over that, please, I would like that.
Do you want to raise it with the chair of the
company? No, Jamie's, I think he's, you're not conflicted.
I'm not sure that fits within the financial statements for the 6 months to the 31st of December, but
I know, I'm just trying to find a way to wangle it in, to be honest, but I think there is an issue that we do need to address. I have raised it.
That's the issue.
Before.
Yeah, but there are some issues around the cafe lease.
Yes, there are,
as I understand.
Yeah.
So,
and that's part of the deal too with Civic, isn't it? The lease.
Luke?
Yeah.
I think we've got a resolution or a note to have a workshop around the whole civic building relationship coming out of our appointments process. So I think we had asked that we actually do have a workshop and hear how that arrangements worked, managed, etc. So that might be the time to address it.
I don't recall that part.
No, I don't.
Sorry, the issue you've raised is one of an area that's been designated for, and it's not being policed, for want of a better term. But it really comes down to what are the ramifications of what is it being, or who set those? Is it the landowner, so we can there say no, you can't, or is it a council bylaw because it's a public space?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think what Glenn raised is there is an area where we've said it's not a smoking area. You believe that it is. My view is that that's operational. It's probably a conversation to be had at first instance with Carleen. Maybe it's not a landlord issue per se.
Issue, if possible.
Yeah, I do know that the original intent, because I have had a conversation with Ngāi Tahu, was that there was to be no smoking at all on the premises. So, and that's part of the lease arrangement. So we need.
But what you're saying is that if people smoke in that area, then the smoke actually comes into the building.
Yeah,
yes, it's been brought up into the ventilation.
The area that he's actually raised isn't actually council land anyway.
Thank you for that, Glenn.
Yes.
So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.
Is it the cost of cigarettes or something?
Canterbury Economic Development Company Limited winding up. Now, just to explain, this is not our CDC. It is the Canterbury Mayoral Forum Company that was established a number of years ago. It's been a a shelf company really, but with ongoing obligations in relation to the reporting and filing annual returns, etc., but of course nothing's transacted. So I would like to move that we approve the winding up of the company. Seconded by David East. Any discussion? Oh, are you?
Oh, yeah, I should have gone. I was a direct.
Right. Okay, Yanni Johansson. Meryl Forum did it. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. The next item is Development Christchurch Limited Update Report, April 2017. Would you like to introduce
happy to
this
move
one?
on. Well, yeah, happy to introduce. Yeah, so basically DCL just updated us on the 3 key bits of work they're doing, which is obviously New Brighton and the hot salt water pools, as demonstrated by David there. You can stand up if you want. Oh, yes, okay. Thank you.
Vicky, are you taking a picture?
And that's progressing well. Obviously, that's in the annual plan, so that will come out through that process. The Peterborough Quarter development is working well, and they reported back on the adventure park, and obviously the impact of the fire, which they're still working through, but otherwise that's it.
So you'll move that?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll get a seconder first. Seconder for Tim Scandrett. So Yanni's got a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering if when DCL or might be able to report back publicly on the work they've done around Central City car parking, given that it has been a very topical issue.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. I think they've been doing some work around the Performing Arts Precinct and to the north of the city, but everything else around car parking actually is pretty much in train. I think we're going to have 6 car parks open within about the next 3 or 4 months, so we'll be back to where we were. But I think once they've got a proposal for the Performing Arts Precinct, then we can talk about that.
Yeah. All right, so I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. The Greater Christchurch UDSIC, advice from CAG on a revised memorandum of agreement for the committee. I'm happy to move this. Sarah Templeton, are there any questions? Any discussion? I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. Stormwater pump station 205 upgrade and repair options. Perhaps Pauline Cotter would like to introduce this and move it.
Yep, thank you. I'll move it. We had quite good discussion about this at the ITI committee meeting, and it's the pump station that pumps the water out from Horseshoe Lake there. And out of the 4 options, the preferred option at 1.9 million seemed to be the most robust. It was going to take into account the sea level rise and give a 50-year life. And because the land has actually sunk, this actually means that they're going to extend the flights they call in the Archimedes screw. It seems to be quite an innovative way to address this problem. But it's also going to protect a lot of homes from above floor flooding. So the fact that it's not operable at the moment, it's very difficult to operate, particularly in a storm event. So it's quite crucial that this actually gets repaired. So we considered all the possibilities, and the preferred option is supported by the committee. We talked about any possible developments in the residential red zone, and this is not going to affect any of that. So happy to move it.
Thank you. Seconded by Mike Davidson. Question, Yanni?
I was just looking at the funding, like this is earthquake damaged, so
Yep.
was this considered as part of the SCIRT process in terms of the allocation from HIG?
Look, Steve's here.
The SCIRT examination of the pump station only focused on the structure, did not look at the operation of the station or issues like ground settlement, which is what's occurred here.
So basically we're fully funding this,
Yes.
even though it's earthquake
The earthquake damage relates to the ground settlement, the station sunk into the ground. Part of the flight extension is earthquake recovery. The bulk of this 1.9 million, 1.5 of it is actually for replacement of ageing equipment. The station is run by one electric pump and 2 diesels. The 2 diesels are ageing and some of the equipment is unable to be replaced. So we've gone a little bit beyond the scope. This includes a bit of betterment, if you like, to use that description.
Sarah, did you have a question or no? Dion?
Just on the ground settling, does that come under the EQC?
No, that's residential. Only.
Is it only that
only
for?
Residential?
And are you replacing the diesels with diesels?
The proposal will be to replace them with electric pumps.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Glenn?
Thank you. My question's over the context background section. Stephen, just 5.5, I know you're going to address the siltation in the tailwater channels and culverts. I just, from a layperson's perspective, wonder about the culverts and whether in your discussion you, was there discussion over whether the culverts themselves, so the outflow into the Avon, seem to be sufficient given the extra loading on the pump station from Preston's and other areas?
There's no proposal. There's no proposal to replace the culverts at this stage.
Okay.
Their capacity should be sufficient. Any extra potential runoff from areas like Preston's has already occurred. Sorry, I just lost track of my thoughts there. The short answer is we believe the culverts are sufficiently at capacity. The ability to lift the water inside the tail race will actually help drive the water through the culverts. There is some siltation of the culverts that needs to be removed.
Okay, I just wondered, just from being on the river, looking back, even at not a high tide level, the water's right out. So.
Yes, it is. Part of this proposal, the pump station settled by 150 millimetres. This proposal includes to restore the lift of the station by that 150 plus an additional 450. So this is actually allowing for some future sea level rise and changes that have already happened within the catchment. What the proposed option is aiming to do is to maximise the capacity of the station within its existing infrastructure limits, which we believe will continue the life of the station for at least another 25 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? So I've got a mover and a seconder. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Item number 15. Pauline, would you like to introduce that and move that?
Yes, well, I'll move it. This is regarding disposal of the land that's already been acquired under the flood intervention policy, and so it means that the infrastructure can be taken off the land and the land can be released for sale. So that means that any new dwellings built on that land would have to comply with the new regulations. It means that the council can actually recoup some of the money that we put into this to allow people to move on. It's basically it.
Seconded by Mike Davidson. Any questions? Any discussion? I actually do want to say something about it because the thing about there's been a lot of discussion about the impact of the earthquake on land, and the people who were made the most vulnerable after the earthquakes were people who didn't require a building consent to repair their properties but had fallen below the levels that you would build at in terms of flood management areas. And so this policy of the council buying out the properties that were vulnerable, very vulnerable to the flooding in the particular areas that they were prior to the work being done, that land can now go on the market, and the new properties that are built there, so it'll be empty land that we sell, and the new properties that are built there will be built above the floor levels that are required for building in these areas. And I think that's a win-win for the city, and it still worries me that we have many properties that are below the flood management area, and that's something that the council's going to have to continue to address over the next many years as various elements of sea level rise and things like that take effect. So I think this is a win-win. It's a very good outcome.
It is, yeah.
Right, Yanni?
Sorry, I should have clarified this. I was just thinking in terms of our needs for this land, if the sale process is not the disposal process that we would normally go through.
No, we decided this when we bought them.
That we would put them back on the market? Yes,
that we would put them back on the market once the work had been completed.
Okay, I just wondered whether we'd consider transfer to other parties or sale to other parties who might have a need for it before we actually made the decision to go to market to sell.
We made this decision when we bought the land, so we need the money, we don't need this.
Through you, Leanne, I can certainly recall that at the time we made decisions around those properties.
Yeah, I think the point that is being made is that things have changed since then, and should we review these properties in the light of where they're located? Do we need to make? Is there a desperate need to make the decision today?
I don't think so.
Whose portfolio is this?
There's nothing in here that says we're going to sell them.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from.
I guess there's no urgency in that. Council's already bought 4 of them and we're in the process of buying another 2. Contracts are out for those. The sort of idea behind progressing this as quickly as possible was to recoup money spent. But the policy is more social based rather than anything else. So council doesn't need this land for any purpose.
Too, that you've got to understand that these are 4 properties peppered around a residential area. So the applications for them may be limited. And we still would need to probably approve one to actually enable the dwellings to be cleared.
We need to approve the removal of the dwellings on the property, but then it also says to consider retaining non-habitable structures such as garages on the property if these are considered to enhance resale value.
And that's good.
Because they're not covered by the floor level rules.
Yeah, but also we've got other papers in the report, around, we've still got the issue of the housing trust, and that wasn't known at the time that we did this. In the original resolutions, I can't see anywhere where it says we would resell them. So I thought,
we did.
Going through.
We absolutely did.
Well, it's not on the resolutions in front of us that I can see.
No, it was in terms of the paper that we considered, it was absolutely crystal clear that some of the cost would be recouped by the selling of the properties.
Yeah, but we're going to face that cost anyway with the housing trust, so whether we do it through this or through another means, but I guess that staff can just take that on board. But I personally think it would be good to just think about that. It's actually neutral in terms of cost to council.
I'm happy to second this.
So the value of what we're selling would be bare land, basically, so it's probably not going to be...
It'll just be section values, ultimately.
It's not a huge...
I understand that, but we've just acquired Linwood Village, and then the housing trust has acquired it, and needs somewhere to put those properties.
Yeah, but it may not be that land is suitable because they don't have the floor levels. You'd have to build up the land in that case, which is an RMA resource consent requirement.
Sure.
And it makes developing houses very expensive on that sort of land, I must say. So it may not be suitable land. We probably need a report on it, but I mean, we probably need a report if we wanted to go down the avenue. But I must say the committee didn't discuss that as an option on the day. but we were quite...
No, because this was the intention. This was always the intention, was to buy and sell.
And sell, because it was an intervention to help these people.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to put the motion. I think that there sometimes things do change, but I think in terms of these properties, the amount of time that would have to be taken to evaluate each of them for the suitability in terms of, for example, social housing, would hold things up too much. And I think the sale of these properties, the funding for that actually comes off the cost of the whole of the flood drainage recovery program for that area.
So it's been incorporated into the budget.
It's been incorporated into the budget for that purpose. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those opposed say no. Is that no? That's carried. Proposed bus passenger shelter installation, 42 Hereford Street. I saw people standing there in the rain yesterday. Very much in favour of this.
Yes, this is an Edshell bus stop, bus shelter, sorry. So there's no cost to council on this. One thing that the committee did talk about was, because there's digital advertising on there, that would it be possible for staff to investigate council having use of that digital advertising space, or some of it, or a portion of it, to actually raise our own profile of events or consultations or stuff going on in town. So hopefully that will come back to us. And so there's also probably going to be another 4 or 5 shelters installed around the city by the end of June, including Kilmore Street, the airport one. So that's quite pleasing.
Great. So that's moved by you.
Happy to move it.
Seconded by Sarah. Okay. Yanni?
Can I just check, like, there's 20 people using this on a day. Is there any process for us to talk to Adshell about stops that have the highest usage, that don't have shelters, being a priority, rather than ones that are good just for advertising but maybe not so good for passenger numbers? Because I personally think it would be really good to start having that conversation. I know our community board has repeatedly put in requests for a bus stop outside things like the disabled persons place in Worcester Street, and it did seem a very small number of people using it as a priority. So
yeah, we've looked at all that, and I think every community board has those discussions every time the bus shelter's going in, but there's a whole lot of conditions and obstacles often around bus shelters, including resource consents and hearings. Some of them can be very expensive. I presume this one over here, because there was no objections, it's quite a quick and easy one to go in. But what we're going to do is, the ITI committee, call for a report and a briefing on the whole process as well, so we can try and get a handle on that.
Do you want it noted in here? Because I can understand why they'd want to go for this one, but I think it would be good to get that other work done as well sooner rather than later, so that we're not just approving ones that are good for advertising, we're actually approving ones that actually have a need in terms of the numbers of passengers that don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. But this one being cost neutral is probably a good one to just get on with, isn't it?
Yeah. So, Dion?
Oh no. Hey, just a very quick a comment on these. Gee, that's very loud today. These bus shelters, because it's outside of the delegation of our community board. I mean, we don't have a decision-making power over that, but I think it would be quite nice to actually just get some sort of update about what's actually happening around these kind of things that are kind of normal community board stuff, but just like a memo to say, hey, look, this is actually happening with inside your ward, because the community board still kind of want to know what's going on, I suppose, because it is part of our community board, even though it's metropolitan delegation. Can that kind of process be put in place?
Could you tell them?
Well, I didn't know until we got to kind of the report.
Yeah. I guess that relates to parking changes and things like that in the inner city, which is outside the central board delegation. So I suppose it's probably reasonably easy to give them board an update, perhaps for every 2-3 months, of changes to parking and bus stops.
Yeah.
I think we just need to do something.
Yep. Glenn?
Thank you. Just a minor but small note, continuing the crusade. Our bus shelters are smoke-free now, so that's part of our extension to our smoking in public places policy. So if we could, I think, obviously, this is an important location, so let's just make sure of that, along with all the others.
Yep.
Tim, thank you, the smoke-free, but is that like with regards to, that's not a bond?
Sorry, we're sort of getting away from the... We're proposing to put a bus shelter at 42 Hereford Street. I saw several people waiting in the rain last night, so the longer we debate this, the longer they'll be waiting in the rain. So, but it's not really relevant to the debate, and just stop it. I blame you for that, and I actually blame myself because I switched off and forgot to pull you up.
Don't mention it again today.
Is anyone else did you have a question?
Sorry, it wasn't a question, it was more of a quip that if the bus stops are smoke-free, most of the buses won't be allowed to stop there.
That is also out of order. So there you go. Mike.
So I just wanted to note, if you have a look at the diagram of it on 6.2, a while back I had a walk around with people from the disability sector, and one of the problems with people with canes is the gap between the glass partition and the ground actually caused an issue for them, because when they were walking along with their cane they didn't see it to the last second, or didn't feel it to the last second. So I brought that up, and they're going to actually look to close that gap and start retrofitting all the existing ones, so to remove that obstacle, which is quite a good progress.
Cool. All right, I will, got a mover and a seconder, have I? No, I haven't got yes, I have got a seconder. Who seconded it? Sarah, that's right, Sarah Templeton. Down the bottom. Yep. Cool, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Transitional City Projects Fund, amendments to terms of reference. Yep, I'll move. We've added some, have we added some words there? No. Sorry? Oh, sorry, I've got written down here, additional wording added to recommendation 3, but there isn't a recommendation 3. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so you're happy to move that,
Leanne, it would be
Vicky?
helpful if you could just say the item number before you...
Sorry, item 19,
So
I apologise.
what happened to...
You did say that, actually.
18?
No, I didn't. You did, because I found it.
Oh, okay.
That's how I knew it.
Anyway, item 19, Transitional City Projects Fund, and Vicky's moving this, but would you like to introduce the paper?
So this has been a fund, it's not massive, it's 150k, this broadens it so that it goes across the whole city. It doesn't specify what parts have to be done in the central city and the suburbs. It changes it slightly from transitional to regeneration, that's especially for you, Leanne, and it enables it to do a slightly different range of things, but basically it just brings it up sort of 6 years, brings it up to date.
Yep. Do I have a seconder?
Generally supported by the committee.
Andrew? Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.
21.
Next one is 21. Heritage Incentive Grant Approval for Tiptree. It's just, we've already passed the minutes, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey?
This is the one with the additional wording. And we'll strike that out. This is the one with the additional wording under 3 and struck out
Okay,
under 4.
so there's been some changes to this one. I noticed that the review of funding didn't have a report back date, and I think that can be somewhat limiting in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So that now reads by September 2017 in order to inform development of the long-term plan, and there didn't seem to be an appetite to to limit the delegation to a value of $100,000, making the point that, you know, community boards have substantially higher delegations, and I don't think any of us can recall a time where we declined a recommendation from the committee. So I think there's a degree of comfort around the delegation. Sorry?
Can I just clarify then, do you mean that it remain as what's here at 100,000, or are we talking about?
I think it's just full delegation as well.
It's just a full delegation.
I'm just wondering, in fact, though, if a figure, say, like 150,000, so that if there were really large applications which might be more contentious, that in fact they do come back to full council. That's my only thought.
Yeah, the only thing that you mentioned, I don't disagree with you, just saying that I can't remember a time we've declined them. I can't either, but most of the time, I think more times than not, we sometimes do add bits and pieces, or we'll amend it at council. And that's just my only concern, is that you know, the last one I can remember us doing was even saying, could we put in something around there about trimming the trees back so we could see it, or could there be a plant there to tell that story? So I don't think that we've got this quite right. I agree, we'd spoken earlier around doing this review. I note that it's there in item 3, but I think Yanni it was that raised a point about perhaps incorporating that with the strategy. I think we do need to have a wider look at it, because there are a lot of reoccurring themes that continually come up, and that's a bit silly really if they continue to come up, so we might as well put them in as policy. But I'm just reluctant to give full delegation there until we've got it right, because I don't think we have got it right yet. And that's not a lack of confidence in the committee, it's just though that we tend to add things to it.
We would revisit that after we've received the review.
I suppose so.
We could revisit the delegation. Sarah?
Yeah.
Just a couple of responses. I think that the last time we changed things was before the committee was seeing these first, and so it was coming straight to council without a committee recommendation, when we were talking about the trimming the trees and putting a plaque and stuff. And I think the committee would probably do that. The other thing when I mentioned this first earlier was that it wasn't for all heritage grants, it was for the heritage incentive grants, because actually there are some heritage grants that we do that are much broader with larger amounts of money. The landmark ones, for example. So it's actually for number 4.
It's to approve
heritage incentive grants. That's the specific fund that we are dealing with today for these 3 applications, and that's the one that has the set limit every year of sort of $700,000. And I'm really comfortable with that. Community boards and others have, you know, delegations over, you know, pots of money that are above the 100,000, and we need to trust our colleagues to just get on with that.
I mean, the interesting thing for me was that the particular heritage incentive grant that we're being asked to approve today wouldn't meet the delegation that was proposed by the committee.
Yeah.
You know, we'd still have to, because it's 117,400.
And yet I'd be very happy for the committee to do that. So, yeah.
Yanni?
Yeah, I thought last term it was raised to 150,000, and I personally am comfortable with that. I do think that there could be quite contentious ones that do come, and also that just given the quantum of the fund, that anything over that 150 actually should be a full council decision, because it would significantly erode the money that could be remaining in it. So, and also because it's actually sometimes good for the full council to be aware of those significant buildings. So my recommendation would be that we change it to 150,000. I think that's in line with the advice that we had last time.
I think there needs to be a figure. The delegations exist for a reason. Staff have got them. Everyone has them. And I just think no delegation or carte blanche probably isn't the way I'd like to go. I'd support raising it, but I think there needs to be something there.
We've set a budget.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, I support no upper limit. Obviously, as a council, we've set a total envelope for how much can be spent on these grants, and we've just recently delegated decision-making to the ITE committee about cycleways, which is a lot bigger than what we're talking about here.
And various community boards, you know, the Linwood Central Heathcote, 1.6 million for the Woolston facility, those kind of things, and we're happy for them to be working on that within that budget. When we're not getting, you know, oversight of every decision that's being made, so.
We have to change that.
Yeah, so everything increased.
Oh, I see. Yeah. your last terms was 100,000.
Yes, I'm just wondering in terms of discussion, in fact, if we should decide on the limit at the time of the review comes through, which should be, well, I guess that's still September, but maybe that this aspect goes back to the committee, so the committee are comfortable with the limit that we're deciding. There's quite a few different views around the table as to whether we have no upper limit or whether we say have it at 150,000, which the last one is my own view at the moment.
All right, so let me see how we handle this. So let's do 1, 2 and 3 together.
I've got a question on that one.
Yep.
Have we got any staff that can answer it though?
Yep, the staff are here.
Where's Brendan? Oh, yeah, down there. Oh, yeah. Brendan, my only question is just around the first one there. I just find that just with the cost with prelim and general and contingency, what actually is that? And the only reason I ask that is because contingency, I'm presuming, is 10%. But when you've got a figure which is the highest figure there, just as general and prelim and general, I'd want a bit more explanation than just general or preliminary for the biggest chunk of that money in there. What is that?
Preliminary and general is just the establishment of the site, scaffolding, all the items that a contractor needs to have available on the site office, everything that you can't necessarily quantify, but they have to include in their price.
Okay.
The other contingency sums are to cover. And on heritage buildings, you will find this virtually every time, that when you get into the work, you'll find more work than you needed than you thought was going to actually need to be dealt with.
Good segue into the second question. And normally we'll do a contingency of 10%. Is that higher, and do you see that often higher in heritage instances like this? And is this 10% or is it greater?
It's normally a standard construction figure, so 10% is about what you would expect.
Yep.
The other thing to remember anyway is those costs, when they're put in, they are provisional sums, so the grant is actually paid out on the actual sums, the receipts that are paid. So it's better to have a slightly higher amount to make sure you've got enough cover, because more than likely you'll find more work than you anticipated. So the provisional and general sums and contingency sums cover those variable work costs that are almost certain going to happen on a heritage building, because it's not as clean and clinical as a new build, where you know pretty much exactly what you're going to have to pay.
And do we normally put contingency in general? And I just found that a bit. I don't recall that. Just all bunk.
What we find is that different applicants and different contractors have different ways of pricing things. So some of them make the P&G as a separate item. Some of them just put it into the rest of their figures. So what I find is best is rather than staff trying to make up and anticipate what exactly is in those figures, it's better to just put them as they come in. But as I say, the key thing is that it's paid, the amount of grant that's paid is on the receipts of the work. So it's the actual cost of the work. These provisional sums may actually leave something in the pot, which is returned to the fund.
And I was just surprised that there's actually nothing about the roof. Looking at the photo, probably the rattiest part of it is actually the roof, and it doesn't have any work actually been done to the roof.
Well, it may look pretty ratty, but that might be part of the character.
I'm sure it might hold out. Is that part of the charm?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, yes, it's odd. Sometimes the most sort of scruffy looking parts of the building.
There's a lot of rust on it, but anyway.
It's taken quite a while to get that rust. Yeah.
Okay, so we're all good with items 1 to 3. So would someone like to move items 1 to 3? Sarah, Glenn. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Now let's. The original motion that was on the paper did actually have a. It had 100,000, and we have a desire to shift that to 150,000, and we have others who believe that there shouldn't be a limit or a cap on the delegation to the committee. It's a limited pool, is I guess the argument there. So can you change the 100 to the 150, and we could have, I think, Yanni and Jamie to move that. Is that right?
I thought there was almost an additional idea which could be somewhere in the middle, and that was perhaps we decide on whether there is or isn't a delegation at the time that the other piece of work is completed, because that might inform that.
No, but there was a delegation the last time of 100,000.
And this
there is a desire. I mean, this one wouldn't have been.
Well, in September 2017, it's up there, obviously. They're going to come back with a review of that, so I almost wonder...
But there's also a view that there shouldn't be a limitation, so...
wouldn't that review potentially inform that, though? So it's hard to say...
it could well be, but I'm just trying to get to a solution here, so...
I'm happy to second that if Jamie's not.
No, I'm okay with it, but, yeah.
Can I just check with Brendan to see how often we get ones that are over 150?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like in the past.
You'll see on the report
Yeah.
that it gives the previous sort of grants for this year. Most of them are under 100, but we usually get at least 2 or 3 that would be over 100.
Yeah, there's one here that's 117, so that's today, and then the 127, back a little bit. Are they often, in the past, have they been over 150? I mean, is 150 just going to see most of the decisions done anyway? Because if that's the case, then, yeah.
I think with inflation, yes, the costs are going up, so it's a good idea to adjust that figure up anyway. But yeah, it is hard to anticipate what's coming in because we get such a wide variety. We get grants right down into a few thousand, right up to the multiple hundreds of thousands. So, I say on average, yes, about probably 2 or 3 a year would be over that figure. Yeah.
One of the other things to note as well is that the committee, if they did have the delegation, the full delegation, but they felt uncomfortable about it, they could always refer it to council. So.
Why not keep it then? I personally, and I know this is moved by Yanni, so if I could just speak to it, that I understand that we have allocated a pot of money for this purpose. I do think that as a councillor, there is that responsibility or expectation that that final say will probably sit with council there. So I'm not saying this due to a lack of trust with the committee, far from it, but I feel that just, good governance is that you want to have those checks and balances there. There has been a figure in the past. I would almost lean towards 100,000 as the original recommendation, just simply because if you look at the history of this, there are only 2 that are over that, so I don't think that's going to be particularly onerous. I think it gives the delegation to, for 95% of the applications are going to have delegated authority there. But I think that you can't just have nothing. I think that there needs to be some figure. So whether it's 100 or 150, if you do 150, then nothing will come to council. But I think you need a threshold, and I would actually be comfortable with 100. It would mean that 2 of the ones that are in 6 figures plus get sign off from council, and I think that's appropriate.
Right.
I'd agree with Jamie. I think 100,000 seems quite reasonable to me. I mean, as Mike pointed out, the cycleways is a much bigger piece of kit. I'd much rather that came back to council than this type of stuff, which seems pretty straightforward. So I'd support 100,000 as a limit.
So dropping it back to what it was.
Yeah, I think that's just in terms of what I remember coming through, a lot of stuff is generally under 100,000.
Well, if we're going to review it at the time that we receive the report, then I'm happy with that. All right, so we'll leave it as it was. Yep.
I actually support the 150. I think the committee's perfectly capable of making the decision as a council would, and that gives us a level of comfort, and it means that less things have to come back here. So I support the 150.
Well, do you want to move that it be amended to read 150?
Yes,
and
I
then
would.
And you'll second that, right? Okay. So but we've now got a resolution that we're capable of putting. So the amendment has been moved. Pauline Cotter, seconded Phil Clearwater, that the sum be increased to 150. This is an amendment, so it's just separate. Yes.
I think 150 is reasonable if council want to delegate the responsibility to a committee to go over the detail of these applications, 150 is pretty reasonable. I think kind of like relitigating issues like Tiptree Cottage, as we have already started today, is a case in point, where in fact council don't really need to do that. A good committee should be able to be trusted to do the work, and there is that's why I'm supporting a limit of 150,000. Thank you.
Right, Yanni.
So, I mean, I'm happy with either 100 or 150, but given that 150 is on the table, happy to support that. I actually don't think it's going to make that big a difference in the interim, because there's so few applications for over 100 that actually I think it's pretty negligible. I just wanted to take the opportunity though under number 3 just to point out that the staff have been working really hard on a heritage strategy and a heritage vision, and just take the opportunity to thank them for that. I think the review that's been requested of the grants, while important, actually I think it should actually align with that work that we're doing. So I just don't want to put the pressure in terms of September 2017 when, if we haven't finished that strategy work, it seems quite hard to do a review of the grants. So I hope that we can give staff a little bit of comfort in terms of that flexibility, because I think it is important that we take a holistic approach to developing the strategy, and obviously funding will be one of the key things that comes out as part of those discussions. The workshops that have already been held, that has been an issue that has been raised. So yeah, but I welcome this grant being made today. It's a shame that the council's not hearing directly from the people that are behind this restoration, but actually it's a really positive story, I think, for a very valuable historic asset in our city, and there's a real desire from the people behind it to open that up to the community and to the citizens of the city to see this historic building when the repairs are complete. So I think it's a really exciting project, and I'm very happy to support it.
Andrew.
Thank you. I'm reasonably ambivalent as to whether 150 or 100 is the right amount. Certainly taking into account Brendan's commentary around inflation, that probably would point to the 150. I think it's important that there is a threshold there somewhere, just from the point of view of an application that was larger than 150,000 would take quite a large proportion of the fund, and that's where we'd perhaps want to be making a council decision. But I'm certainly supportive of a delegation going to the committee so that we're not dealing at council with the kind of things we see in front of us today. I've got full confidence in the committee to do that work, and of course the committee is the right place for the detailed question and answer session to be held so that the committee can be comfortable. So on balance, I'm comfortable 150 and happy to support that.
So I'm just getting this reworked, because we had Yanni and Jamie move and second the 100,000, and the amendment is now in the name Cotter and Clearwater, and it's the amendment that changes the number from 100 to 150, right? So I will... Oh, sorry.
I was just thinking that this is a useful discussion to be having in terms of live streaming, because it actually raises the profile of our heritage buildings, and if we have a higher threshold, then maybe this won't happen.
All right, well, I will put the amendment first. Those in favour of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no.
No.
I can't tell. Do it.
I think that's carried.
Yeah. That's carried?
Well,
no. Show of hands. Show of hands. Those in favour of the amendment, raise your hand. Those opposed. So you want that, do you want that Manji, East, Galloway, Gough, Kewen, was that it? Okay.
Yeah.
That you were the only one on that side?
It would have cost more than 50.
Okay, so that is carried. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you.
To address Anne's concern there, no, we can still talk about the heritage grants in the minutes.
Yes, you can have a wee chat in the break. Thank you. Community organisation loan scheme. Oh, sorry, no, I've gone off the heritage grants. Heritage incentive grant approval for 209 Chewham Street.
Well, the committee can do this.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce this one, Phil?
So 209 Chewham Street, we're referring to, for those who can remember, the former High Street Post Office building, and now, as we know, the C1, and it's also was Alice's as well. So that's the building we're talking about, and like it's quite a clear, and the report shows it's quite a clear part of that street scene. It's a really nice heritage part which has been preserved, and it doesn't get the it isn't the Group 1 highly significant buildings there for nothing within the district plan. So it's a relatively small amount, $55,931, and of course, as councillors will be aware, this money isn't paid until the renovations are completed. And there's also a covenant around the building as well. And if councillors have any further questions, I'm sure Brendan will answer them.
Very good. So you're moving that?
I'll move it.
Do I have a seconder, Glenn Livingston? Any discussion? I'll put
Just a brief thing. I think what this shows, what the two applications shows, is that heritage isn't just confined to the central city. It's in the outlying areas too. And I think as part of the strategy, we're going to look at developing a heritage trail. It's really important to have that. People talk about future buildings, yes, must have them, but they only have meaning when you have your heritage as well. Mm-hmm. So we've got to ensure we retain it and, fully approve this.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried. And Phil, would you like to introduce the next one, which is item 23, approval of an extension of time for a heritage incentive grant for 5 Norwich Quay.
So it's simply an extension of time for this. Council have already approved it. It's just that the people doing the work, it's taken a lot longer and more difficult than they anticipated. So we're talking about what was previously the Littleton Harbour Board building, and replacement of a whole upper story of that. And so it's again the same provisions apply as we referred to in the previous item.
And there's a second delegation here, which is the delegation to the committee to approve extensions of up to 5 years for the uptake of heritage incentive grants, which again, I mean, in line with the conversation we've just had.
That's right.
Very, very much support. Yep. Do I have a seconder? A question. Okay.
Question too, sorry.
Who would like to second it? Andrew would like to second it. Norwich Quay. Is that in your patch? Correct. Aha. Mike and then Dion.
Thank you. I just got a quick question on that second resolution, and I don't have too much of an issue, but I'm just wondering why 5 years, which obviously makes it roll over election terms, which and over long-term plans. I'm just wondering why we do that and not just do it to the end of the actual election cycle, term cycle, and if there's any impact from doing it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've got an answer to it, but Brendan, have you got a view or?
Well, 5 years, 5 years is quite a long time, and it may cause accounting issues for one thing. But what we're finding is that the work that's coming out of the grant schemes now, or is being funded by the grant schemes, is a lot more complicated than the grant scheme was originally intended. It was originally just for maintenance and conservation works to existing buildings. Now we're dealing with repairs and seismic upgrades to damaged buildings, and the work's much more complicated. And we're finding that 18 months invariably is a hard time frame for people to meet. By the time they've planned it, they've got their engineering in place, their architectural drawings in place, and actually started the work. 18 months is really tight, even for relatively small projects. So a lot of them are coming back for extensions of time. And normally we ask for at least a year in terms of the extension of time. So I don't know, maybe something like 2 years would be a better time frame. We would like people to actually make sure that people do the work. So maybe giving them 5 years might be too much, because they might just sit back and think, oh, I've got 5 years, let's take it easy. But we want them to actually do the work. So,
is that okay with the mover and the seconder? Yep. Dion, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the ongoing maintenance of this building in particular and others that need these extensions of time. Do you check to make sure that they are keeping them like weather tight and stuff, so that there's not ongoing deterioration of them?
Well, that's a different issue. I mean, all buildings have to meet the building code. So, and the building code has provisions in it for the long life of the components of the buildings. They have to meet the building code. I think it's 50 years. So there is maintenance, standard maintenance that you have to do to any building. It varies obviously with the type of materials that you've got on the building, but repainting, I mean, the previous grant was an example of that, where a painted building has to be repainted probably every 15 to 20 years. So that's a fairly standard maintenance issue. We don't monitor that, but what obviously I monitor is the works that are going on that are funded as part of the grant. It's up to the building owner then to ensure that the investment is protected through the maintenance, the long-term maintenance of the building. We will certainly help them with a long-term maintenance plan if they choose to do that. We've done that on other grant-assisted projects.
Cool, that's good fun.
All right, so Andrew?
Thank you. If I can just speak to this briefly. This is a significant building in Littleton, and of course in a context of Littleton having lost a lot of its heritage as a result of the earthquakes. This building is on Norwich Quay, which is the main state highway that goes to the port gates. That's an area which over time has seen loss of a number of other buildings and an increased industrial creep because of the port operations. This building actually forms part of or potentially could form part of a heritage precinct, with this building on the one corner, the old British Hotel on the opposite corner, and the Littleton Times building next door. So a significant heritage feature because of its location and because of its proximity to other remaining heritage in Littleton. We're fortunate here to have a building owner who took steps to preserve the building in its damaged state, and certainly fortunate to have a building owner who's willing to invest in the future of this building, given its prominence and significance to the history of that lower part of Littleton. So I'm strongly supportive of this.
All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Community Organisation Loan Scheme. Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you.
Who have we got for this one? Has anyone got any questions on this one? Happy to move Tim Scandrett, seconded Sarah Templeton. Any discussion? Phil?
I just want to strongly support this application. I think Kilmarnock Enterprises have a long history. They do terrific work with people with disabilities, and they've survived very well financially as well too, through the earthquake, in terms of the way they've done their work, and that they will in the future be able to sell their building to back up the mortgage that they're asking for a loan for. So I strongly support it.
Well, I'll just simply say that I do too. It's I went to visit Kilmarnock Enterprises last year and was blown away. They have completely transformed their operation. They're a genuine social enterprise. They offer opportunities to people that would otherwise potentially be excluded from the workforce, and in a way that is much more than just a job, but it's a way of life, and I just take my hat off to them. So I think this is a really good way of supporting them with their new premises. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Amended Housing Accord. I think we had a couple of amendments to the... Oh no, we were going to refer this one back to the Housing Task Force, or to the Housing Task Force, in order to bring back recommendations to the 25th of May. There's just some slight wording in there about, you know, I mean, I think it's really important, for example, to have the Mayor as part of the governance group, but
Absolutely.
I should be able to delegate that authority, and, you know, the Minister may do as well, although we like having meetings with ministers, so...
I've let Paul Cotton know, so he's happy with the dates.
He's happy with that, so, well, Glenn, would you like to move that the council refer this item to the Housing Task Force?
Yep, happy to do that.
And seconded by Phil Clearwater. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. You can all have to behave for this one.
Promise?
Code of conduct, item number 27. Right.
Should the terrible
Point of the recommendations that we have in front of us is to receive the information, the report, adopt the code of conduct with an amendment to 4.11 as discussed, replacing the council's current code. Request each community board to replace their current codes of conduct with new code, and that request is in order to have consistency across all of our community boards and the council itself, and authorises the chief executive to approve any non-material changes that may be required before the new code of conduct is published. You know, don't want apostrophes in the wrong place, do we?
No, absolutely.
No, definitely not.
I'm very down on apostrophes.
Yeah, so am I. So am I. You and I have this in common. All right. Are there any? Well, I'll move it, and Andrew will second it. So, are there any questions? Is there any discussion? Shall I just go ahead and put the motion? I was going to give a homily, but I won't. All right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done. Local governance statement. This is just a technical requirement to have this received, as it's already published on the website.
Yes, we had to comply with the Act by having it on our website within 6 months of the election, which we've done.
Yeah, good. All right, so I'll move that, seconded by Phil. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Now let's whip back to item number 8. And item number 8 is the Building and Infrastructure Improvement Allowance Betterment Fund. I did ask that the correct title and its known title were used throughout the document, so that I think that people got used to calling it a betterment fund, but it's a loan facility. It's a capacity to borrow. So the proposal is that we allocate the balance of the allowance to the Port Hills Recovery Program, including water protection, parks restoration and public safety elements, and then close the fund once the allocation has occurred. And we note that the original purpose of the Building and Infrastructure Improvement Allowance was superseded with the global insurance settlement, and that the recommended use of the balance of the fund does not align with the original purpose of the fund, but supports, actually I would just put supports recovery from a more recent event which is not yet budgeted for. There's an element of infrastructure, but there's the environment doesn't feel like the word infrastructure to me. So I'm happy to move that, and seconded by Dion. So now, Yanni.
Had a question, I guess it's for the Chief Executive, in terms of there is a number of skirt or earthquake repair projects that still need to be done, and I just wanted to understand what the process is for seeking additional funding to do it once and do it properly. And I'll just give you an example of Griffiths Ave, where we've just had the road renewal start work notice, or for the consultation document, sorry, which had its earthquake repair done 2 years ago. And I'm struggling to kind of understand why, no one asked us for money to do the renewal at the time, the earthquake repair, but also if there's other roads that are being repaired at the moment, and my understanding is roads are the sort of last thing that Skirt's doing, if there's a process by which you can seek additional funding to actually do it once and do it properly, rather than having to come back in 2 years' time and put more money on budget and waste that resource.
Certainly I'll ask Dave Adamson to respond to that.
The infrastructure strategy that went through last time incorporated what the state of the roads would be incorporated once Skirt left, because we knew that Skirt wasn't going to look at all of those areas, and there were areas where Skirt got in and they just patched certain areas where functionality had been lost. So we will have a rough road, but building into your long-term strategy and your financial strategy as we move forward are the obligations required to bring your infrastructure back to that pre-earth quote state. So those projects are incorporated in your long-term plan. Obviously, there's a time. Obviously, you've got a limit to the size of your capital program, and so there's got to be those priorities, as you said, which will be part of the long-term LTP that will come back up.
The question is not about the long-term plan of the infrastructure strategy, it's about the immediate future of the final 175 projects. Is there any opportunity for any assessment of those additional funding?
Yeah, because
we money that would have been used for that
it is relevant. It is relevant, and that's why I put this to the end of the public.
So that's part of.
Aren't allocated any further work to Skirt. Skirt have got some projects. They've got an envelope of work that is.
Yeah, but what Yanni is asking is
part of the due diligence, really, isn't it?
Well, no. With those projects that remain, are there any betterment opportunities that sit with them? And if so, how would they be brought to our attention given the winding up of the fund?
I would have to go and have a look at that. Basically, the only projects that are outstanding are some quite big pump station projects and all the rest of them. So I think the opportunity for betterment in any of those is in actual fact very, very limited. I'd have to go and exactly see what I think there's about 12 that are outstanding at this point in time. But my understanding is they are large pump stations, wastewater pump stations, those sorts of things. That the reason that they're delayed is because we've had to get delays in specialist equipment coming in to finish them off. Otherwise, they would have all been finished. So the opportunity really of doing things in that streetscape have gone, unless we got Skirt back in to do the betterment, where it would be more cost effective for us to get another contractor in, or our maintenance contractor, if we were looking at that sort of betterment. So we've got master plans sitting there. We are looking at ways that we can integrate all those in as we go through with our capital program. So the 1.1 million, basically, I suppose the reason why betterments come to you is because it's...
That wouldn't pay for much.
So maybe we could get a list of the outstanding Skirt projects and the state where they're at. That would be really useful. And
it wouldn't be hard.
No, we've had that list, I think, previously or recently.
Recently.
Yeah, we can provide that again.
There is an updated list that came out a week ago, which you obviously haven't seen, but it's just the tail end of those, and my understanding, I think, is about four. John Matthew may be able to give advice on that when he comes in shortly about what those are. I could actually dig it out of the report.
Well, but I mean, I think that's not unreasonable, just to circulate the list of the remaining Skirt projects. But I mean, the truth is that shutting this down as a fund doesn't actually stop us from bringing it back for a specific decision. I mean, we heard before around the pump station that there was an element of betterment, and so I think people have moved away from using the fund because it has so little left in it that they just wrap it up into the cost of the total program now. But if there are opportunities within what remains of Skirt, I mean, I don't know that the HIG would actually support them doing additional work even if we paid for it. I don't know, because they're wrapping up and getting out of town, as it were.
The one issue I can see is around the defects that need to be replaced, and sometimes it just seems crazy that, I mean, the streets that look like Dalmatians, they've got so many asphalt holes in them that you actually what you might actually do is actually seal it properly.
Yeah,
but some of that will be the defect staff, but actually it might require additional funding. So, but I appreciate that this fund, that doesn't preclude us from doing that. But I think if we can get the list of the projects, that's the first starting point.
At this point in time, there's 157 projects that haven't gone through practical completion. And I imagine some of those will be the ones that Yanni's talking about, where they will have to go back and do work. There is that amount allocated into the Skirt program to go back, and before those defects all have to be fixed before they get transferred to handover to council. Then they go into practical completion. Before 12 months after that, they become finally completed. Now, what we normally do is get rid of all of those defects. Every project now is walked over by staff prior to it going through that practical completion. But there is allocation in the funding for that amount, so we don't need additional funding in there. Yeah. That is already allocated through the HIG model, cost sharing agreement, to actually cater for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, that's the follow-up. The point is that the design or the scope of the repairs, in some cases, I think has been insufficient to actually fix it, which means you've got all this extra maintenance that's generated. So if they're going back to fixing it, they may need more money to do actually a different, a better scope of repair. But that's okay, we can, if we can get the list, and the ones that are still waiting to be signed off.
Yeah. Okay, I'm in 120, isn't it? 157 projects. Okay. All right, so I've got a mover and a seconder. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And I'd like to now move that we move into the public excluded session for all the reasons listed in the agenda, and for item 34 for Leah Scales, CFO, Christchurch City Holdings, to be present. Item 35, insurance issues, Greg Rose and Becca to be present. And item 42, the transfer of assets and housing opportunity, Kate Kearney, CEO, Alex Skinner, Board Chair, and Leah Scales, CFO, CCHL, but the former two of Otatahi Community Housing Trust, and all of the reasons are set out on the agenda. So I'll move that, seconded by Andrew. Actually, maybe I shouldn't. No, maybe you shouldn't. Tim, Yanni.
Yeah, I just want my vote recorded against 41, 42, and 43. I believe there's significant public interest that they should be done in public. Lancaster Park, transfer of assets, and the supplementary.
Okay, so if you just show that on the minutes, and I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Now we're going to adjourn for morning tea, and there should be a trolley available, and it's being brought into the room. So we'll start again in 10 minutes. No, well done, all of you.